Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Later on, we're going to talk about the Colorado Constitution, but a couple guys with faces made for radio. Neil Best from KUNC and the Colorado Sound. Hey, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure to be here.
All right. First of all, for those in the Denver area who might not know KUNC, this is a public radio station that kind of grew out of UNC, surprisingly. And real quickly, what was the history?
The station was created in 1967, owned by the students at then Colorado State College. In 1970, the college became the University of Northern Colorado. The students realized that there were things like the FCC and the EBS system. They gave up the station, turned it over to the university. We were part of the public service mission of the university to 2001, when we were to be sold to our colleagues and competitors at Colorado Public Radio. The community raised a hue and cry. The trustees gave us 20 days to come up with our own proposal. We raised about $2.5 million cash in 20 days. And the community bought the license. We incorporated as community radio for Northern Colorado as a nonprofit to bring service to Northern Colorado and beyond. And we've been independently operated since 2001. And we operate KUNC. 2 years ago, we added a second station, which allowed us to make KUNC reborn as an all-news station. And the second station then was the Colorado Sound, which is a music station.
Which is one of the wildest, greatest stations I ever listened to. So
well, thank you.
It is just incredible music. But get back to KUNC, which, by the way, is at, what, 91.5/.7.
Yeah, no, we have a whole bunch of signals. We're at 91.5 from our tower above Fort Collins, Buckhorn Mountain. In Golden, we're on Lookout Mountain at 91.7, and Boulder at 102.7. We have 4 other stations at different locations and 14 translators, all with different frequencies, but all rebroadcasting the KUNC programming.
What I really wanted to chat with you about is the new dynamic of what I see as public broadcast as newspaper. And since newspapers are dwindling, the paper of record in the Denver Post, for where I have a column, it keeps getting smaller and smaller, and it doesn't have the legs it had. It doesn't have the competition of the news anymore. And I'm seeing organizations like yours, how to put it, picking up the slack. That is, I wonder in years to come, instead of a newspaper, if it might be radio stations, particularly public radio stations, that become the newspaper of record. How far off am I on this?
Sadly, I don't think you're far off. I think you're looking at the future. One of the saddest days in my life was the day the Rocky Mountain News folded and I didn't have 2 local newspapers in the morning. And yes, newspapers across the board, it isn't just the Denver Post, are getting thinner. There's places like New Orleans and Ann Arbor where you don't get 7-day home delivery anymore. So the future is not bright for the newspaper industry.
And I understand they're going digital, and we old geezers who like pieces of paper, that's dying off anyway, but they'll be pushing electrons. But so does KUNC. Let me ask particularly, Benda Birkeland has been causing a firestorm down in the Capitol. She's the one breaking all the, I'll call them #MeToo stories. I don't want her following me around. I don't want her picking up any story. I don't want her talking to any of my old girlfriends. All right, so just make sure that doesn't happen. Why her? Out of a pretty sizable pool of reporters down there, why is it that your reporter is the one breaking all these stories?
I think there's 2 reasons, and the first, I'm going to disagree with you. There is not a sizable pool of reporters anymore.
Fair point.
When I used to cover the legislature in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, there would be 24 reporters hanging out. Now, if you have 3 or 4, it's a busy day.
There's still...
So that's part of it.
There's more than there were actually a couple years ago, thanks to some online venues, including Complete Colorado and Colorado Politics. So there's a new thing there, but point taken.
Yeah, but and the other part of it is Benta is at the Capitol reporting public policy all year round. Which even some of the staffing that happens during the session disappears. And she's been there 10 years. And so when this story emerged, kind of the #MeToo stories as we're referencing it, emerged, there was people there that said, we have a story to tell. We haven't told the story. we're ready to tell the story, but who do we know and who do we trust? And I think over 10 years, her reporting's been straightforward, has been reputable and recognizable. And so when people were ready to tell the story, and they started telling stories, and other people said, you know, then she went to verify what she was hearing from other people. People trusted her. So it's a matter of...
There are other people who've been there. I think about Charles Ashby, who's been there forever, and other good guys, but she's not a guy.
Well, and
I think that has a part of it.
You know, John, I'm not there on a, you know, I'm not at the Capitol very much at all. And so that may be some of it. This whole reporting issue is fraught with so many different strands. But you know, the fact that she is a woman may help. But I think her track record, I mean, I think you're in the public arena. You know who you would trust to talk to. I think it's the same there. And I think, you know, the fact that she's been doing this for 10 years. And during the summer, she gets out to a number of these districts. It isn't just KUNC that's airing Benta's reporting. There's 15 other stations around the state, and a lot of them in the smaller communities in southern Colorado, western Colorado, where she goes during the summer and spends time in the district. And so people trust it. You know, she's just one of those Denver people. And then, not to disparage Denver people, but there's a trust across a number of, I think, folks at the legislature that she is a person you can trust.
Well, including staff. And this is the part that people don't always get. The legislature's there 120 days, and you know, every night's a party, and you know, they eat and drink, and it's a college campus. So none of the stories that are breaking are a surprise to anyone who is in that atmosphere. It's, you know, these are people off at college again, you know, especially from outside districts where they can come in and spend the night, and they're away from their families, and it's pretty amazing. But the staff, a lot of them work year-round, and they've got, you know, from legislative counsel to the fiscal policy analyst to all these other folks, they're there all the time. So they know where the bodies are buried, and they've heard it all, they've seen it all, but they're not allowed to talk about it.
Well, people talked to Benta because they felt it was an important story, and again, you had a combination, I think, of staff that have visited with Benta, but also legislators that have visited with Benta.
Did you have any hesitation rolling with these stories? I mean, you not only have to play station manager, you have to do the fundraising, you have to do all that other good stuff, but did you okay these stories? Did you see them coming out first? Was that you putting a thumbprint and say, hit the publish button, we're going with it?
No, I left that to my news director, my managing editor, which is, I think, is an important part of who we are and why we might become the paper of the record, if you will. We still very strongly believe in the editing process. And so nothing that Benta has done has ever been just Benta. There are people asking her questions, editors asking her questions saying, who's your second source, who's your third source? Do you have a second source? Do you have a third source on this? When the initial reporting was done, we vetted it through an attorney. There are libel laws we want to be careful of for two reasons. One, for those who stand accused, to make sure that we're not libeling them, and also you need to protect the organization as well and make sure we don't end up in lawsuits because of faulty reporting. A quick story, a year and a half ago, I saw a story from Newsweek that was posted and then taken down, and they said, well, it wasn't edited. As a kid who was in debate in the 60s and read every news magazine possible, the thought that somebody as important to my growing up as Newsweek posted something and they said, oh, well, we didn't edit that. Well, that's what's different about us, is we have editors. Everything we do.
But most newspapers, I want to be careful how I say this, can't afford the same level of editing, copy editing, as they had before. And the pressure to publish. I mean, my friends who are reporters, I mean, I feel sorry for them. It is a grind. A little bit similar with what you do. I do talk radio. Mm-hmm. Love talk radio for a couple reasons. Unlike what you do, which is one-way communication, what I do is two-way communication. So when I'm being an idiot, you call me up on the phone live and you challenge me and we have a debate and everybody can hear it. The other part of it is I don't need to be scripted. You guys are always scripted. And so it's very, very careful what you say. That takes more preparation. Mm-hmm.
And one of the areas we could talk about is how are we funded? And you mentioned newspapers, they're losing their advertising. The paywalls aren't working that well because people, why do I have to pay for a newspaper? We've been fundraising since 1978. So people expect public radio to turn to the audience for support. So when I do on-air fundraising, one of the things I love to talk about
Which
is
we all hate, by the way.
I wouldn't be in my business without it, just because I like to make it shorter. I like to make it less painful, but it's a direct connection with the audience. And one of the things I love to tell the audience is, you're not just paying for Benta's reporting, you're not just paying for Luke's reporting, you're also paying for the people that edit them, so that you can trust that people are asking questions saying, are we sure we've got this right? And I think that's the difference, is that that's how we're able to do that. That's why we talk about newspapers not having the copy editing they used to be. The money isn't there, at least for now, and hopefully in the future.
So what
people
I'm hearing
will appreciate
is
that.
You are so flush with money that people don't need to donate nearly as much as they used to. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I wouldn't say we're flush, but I will say this: we've grown a lot because people do find it. Well, I don't have 2 newspapers in Denver anymore. My local newspaper is much smaller.
Let me talk a little bit about public broadcasting, because I have a love-hate relationship with public broadcasting, particularly NPR, in that there is a bias that I hear in NPR, and it is as blatant as a bias on Fox News. And the screed that they've been on for the last 2 weeks on gun issues, for me, I find it's not news, it's editorial. You pipe down NPR, so does Colorado Public Radio. Do people in public radio understand, at least on that level, at least coming down from NPR, that those of us consuming it, we hear editorial, not news?
I would answer that to say, I hear what you say, but I can go back to my office and I'll probably have a voicemail from somebody saying, why did you sell out to the Trump administration? You and that person are like the 2 blindfolded guys touching the elephant, and you're touching different parts. I think Fox and MSNBC take a very definite position to benefit their stockholders, which is their fiduciary responsibility. MSNBC isn't liberal because NBC wanted to be liberal. They were the second guy at the table. Fox beat them to it.
But
So I don't accept.
Listen, I'm the one hardcore libertarian out there actually listening to public radio pretty regularly.
Oh, there's more than just you.
No, there isn't. But I guarantee you, the other ones who might be listening aren't giving a dime to it, because that's what they feel. I wonder if there was more conservative or libertarian, or at least limited government voices in radio, if we'd be able to open up the audience, because those talk radio stations, which are being squeezed by commercials, these people want someplace to go, and it seems like public broadcast would be a great home for them, but they can't stomach it, and there are times I got to turn it off.
Yeah, John, some of you and I are probably going to disagree. I mean, 1A, our program there's 9 to 11 now, Monday through Friday, was at CPAC. They were on the broadcast row, broadcasting from CPAC.
I heard them.
The founder of CPAC is a regular guest on 1A. This last week I heard National Review folks 2 or 3 times. The Heritage Foundation interviewed on Weekend Edition last week. Now,
you just mentioned 3 guests, but I would tell you about the hosts and their point of view on where what oozes from how they feel, and they emote quite a bit. But I wanted to bring it to someplace else. You're a little different in that you have local voices as well. Local voices that I think are pretty accessible. I've had, I wouldn't call it a feud, but I've got a complaint with Colorado Public Radio. They've got great reporters, but they're not allowed to come on here and talk on the show. The only reporters I know of that are forbidden for doing that. And I've had my gripes with how they do what comes out of the speaker. Let me run this by as a comparison. So this station, Colorado Public Radio, also there's Rocky Mountain Public Radio, Channel 6, or television. So Colorado Public Television is kind of the redheaded stepchild, that they do Masterpiece Theater, they do all the stuff that's piped down. It's very respectable stuff. This station, Colorado Public Television, does Colorado Inside Out, which is unscripted. They do this, which they let me do this, which I don't know of any station that does that. I sense kind of a similar situation on the two choices for public radio in this state between CPR and KUNC. Am I off on that?
Well, I'm not the red-haired, I'm the gray-haired, but
at least you're
no,
involved.
I've always said we are two very different organizations. I respect a lot of what Carter Public Radio does. I can't speak to what their policies are. I've always said to date ourselves, and you and I can do this. KUNC is kind of like Avis. We're number 2, so we try harder. And that's not to say they don't try very hard, but we pedal as hard as we can, and we try and do a good job for our audience.
With a fraction of the budget, allow me to say. I've taken a look at both budgets. You do it for a fraction of the cost, and it's incredible. All right, one last pitch for the Colorado Sound. If people haven't tuned into this station for music, because the beautiful thing about Colorado Sound, you can't put too much politics into the words between the music. Why did this station get born? How's it doing?
It got born because the frequency 105.5, again, broadcasting from just west of Fort Collins, became available. We were a dual format, news in the morning, afternoon, music in the middle of the day. It was not working as well as it used to be. There was a hunger for us to be all news, but we deeply believe in music. Northern Colorado has an awful lot of live music. I think music and culture are essential to us. I have an arts and culture reporter on KUNC. So we saw an opportunity. And so to the extent that we can create a music station that is free of the corporate restraints, so many of our colleagues in the commercial world are, to the point we could create a station that really promotes Colorado music, and to the extent we could create a station that traces from Howling Wolf to the Rolling Stones to Nathaniel Rateliff in this day and age. We saw it as an opportunity, and so far it's working well, and people are enjoying, people learning.
It's hard, musically, it's hard to get guys my age to want to listen to different music. You know, we're very comfortable with what we're comfortable. Somehow it manages to introduce me to new stuff without turning me off. So
well, that's the goal.
Thank you for that.
That's the goal, is to make you know who Father John Misty is today.
Neil, thank you so much. Stay tuned.